Is this some kind of joke? Alien shocked after watching humans survive on primitive emergency kit. Commander Zwiexthala stared at the holographic display with 3 of her 4 eyes, the 4th one twitching in what her species considered profound bewilderment. The data streaming from their observation probe orbiting the 3rd planet couldn't possibly be accurate. "Run the analysis again," she commanded her subordinate, Keep TOS, whose tentacles were already dancing across the bioneural interface with practiced efficiency. "Commander, I've run it 17 times. The results remain consistent." Keep TOS's voice carried the harmonic frequencies of genuine confusion. "The humans appear to be thriving." 3 standard galactic cycles ago, the Hegemony Council had voted to conduct a controlled experiment on the primitive species they discovered in the Sol system. The humans had just begun venturing beyond their home planet's atmosphere, barely qualifying as a level 0. 7 civilization on the Kardashev scale. Perfect test subjects for evaluating emergency survival protocols. The experiment was elegantly simple. Strand a small group of humans on a barren moon with nothing but what the Council's xenobiologists had calculated as the absolute minimum survival kit. Based on extensive analysis of human physiology and psychology, they'd provided exactly what should keep the subjects alive for 30 rotations. No more, no less. It was meant to be a clinical study of cognitive adaptation under extreme resource scarcity. Zwiexthala had volunteered to oversee the project, expecting to document the predictable decline of primitive mammals faced with an impossible situation. Instead, she found herself witnessing something that challenged every assumption in the hegemony's vast databases. "Show me Sector 7 again," she ordered. The display zoomed in on a cluster of structures that shouldn't exist. Where the humans had been given basic atmospheric processors, they'd somehow jury-rigged them into a complex hydroponic system. The emergency shelter materials, designed for temporary protection, had been woven into an elaborate dome that not only provided superior insulation, but had been decorated with intricate patterns that served no logical survival function. "They're not just surviving," Keep TOS observed, manipulating the view to show the humans engaged in what appeared to be recreational activities. "They're enjoying themselves?" Through the probe's sensors, they watched as the human subjects had somehow converted their meager rations into what their database identified as cuisine. The standard-issue protein cubes and mineral supplements had been combined, heated, seasoned with local flora they'd tested for toxicity, and shaped into forms that were aesthetically pleasing as well as nutritious. But that wasn't the most baffling part. "Computer," Zwiexthala commanded, "analyze human behavior patterns in subsection 3 Delta." The hologram highlighted a group of humans who had fashioned musical instruments from discarded supply containers. Another group had created games using small rocks and marked surfaces. Children, barely developed specimens by galactic standards, were engaged in activities that served no survival purpose whatsoever yet seemed to increase overall group cohesion and morale. "Commander," Keep TOS's voice dropped to a whisper, "look at their resource consumption rates." The data was impossible. Not only were the humans surviving on their primitive emergency kit, they were doing it while using 23% fewer calories than the hegemony's most optimistic projections. Somehow, their inefficient activities, the music, the games, the elaborate food preparation, were actually making them more efficient survivors. "There's more," Keep TOS continued, highlighting another section of data. "They've begun modifying the emergency medical supplies. They're not just treating injuries. They're using them for preventive care, psychological comfort, and they've even created a primitive but effective diagnostic system." Zwiexthala felt all 4 of her eyes focus on a single point in the display where one of the humans was teaching another to read, using scratch symbols in the moon's dust. They were not just surviving, They were preserving and transmitting knowledge, creating culture, building something larger than the sum of their individual survival needs. Is this some kind of joke? She muttered, echoing the phrase she'd learned from intercepted human communications. The question hung in the air as both aliens contemplated a disturbing possibility. Perhaps the hegemony's definition of primitive needed serious revision. Perhaps these humans, with their inexplicable ability to find meaning and joy in the face of scarcity, represented something far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The experiment was supposed to last 30 rotations. The humans were already planning for 100.